There's a couple of different things I want to mention that could be useful to you guys. We have so much more in the course. Eddie has, I think he said 600 pages of notes around flow state, and it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I think we'll start. So today we're going to talk about good work-life balance, or work-life integration as it's called now. This will enable you to achieve better results in pretty much anything you want to tackle in your life. Bad work-life balance will basically make you struggle, as you won't have proper frameworks and techniques to regenerate, unwind, and recover. You can think of like people pushing 12, 14 hours at work and then just falling asleep. So their life becomes just work and sleep. That never really improves creativity, doesn't make you more efficient. You can learn some stuff as you work, but it's never going to be exponential. And we want to make sure that you can optimize your brain and your skills to the best of your abilities. So today we're going to talk about finding that kind of balance and how to integrate it into your personal and business life. And I'm going to share my personal journey and how I ended up here, where I'm today. I'll try to share tips and advice that can let you get into similar, very comfortable situation sooner rather than later, because I've been postponing this for a while. And we're also going to talk about common mistake and fallacies that a lot of us will fall into. And to build a happier life, we'll focus on three main principles that can help us achieve it, which is growing exponentially, designing our own lifestyle with intent, and achieving financial independence. And I'll give you some tips where those things differ from the standard literature that you can find on the web. And a little bit about me, because not everyone is familiar with my work. Not everyone here is engineer. We reached out to a wider range of people. So I'm a pretty successful software engineer. I created tools that are used by over 80,000 teams around the world, including teams at Apple, Airbnb, Disney. I've been nominated for a design award, and I even built a platform that won a couple of Emmys for the NYTimes, which I led for almost 6 years. I also worked as a lead on Headspace, which is one of the most popular meditation apps, and meditation is a very useful technique as well, which I'll mention. And I also been approached by a lot of the major tech companies like Apple, Facebook, many times to try to hire me, but I always wanted to be able to work on my own stuff and to create my own impact rather than being a cog in the wheel of a large corporation. I also spoke at over 60 international events around the world in cities like New York, Atlanta, Tokyo, Singapore, Turkey. Pretty crazy journey. And I've been doing this while also training bodybuilding competitively and doing a lot of other crazy stuff. So it's been a lot. And I was not only able to build the kind of tools and commercial products, but also I was able to teach a lot of the engineers, and I worked full-time from the first year of university, and I did, as I said, competitive bodybuilding, and I did public speaking all at the same time, which led to people asking me, when do I sleep? Like, I literally had many people ask me, like, when do I sleep? And that is one of the fallacies, which I'm going to talk about soon. But this is this kind of hustle culture, right? So like someone is working really hard and delivering a lot of the content. People feel like, oh, this is someone to look up to. And I appreciate, people having respect for my work, because I worked on it for a very long time. But it's also not something that I recommend to people. So I would love to say that I was able to achieve all those things by having a very good work-life balance from the get-go, but that was not what happened at all. In fact, I was editing bad balance for the first 13 years of my career, and I worked like 60, 80 hours per week, every single week. And I was lucky enough that at least I avoided lifestyle inflation. At some point, I was even spending just 9% of my income, and my income wasn't that crazy back then. But I had no life. So I didn't really have time to spend the money I was making. It was just work and productivity. I was obsessed with. So that was anything but balance, and I don't think it was healthy. And today, as I'm older, I also get hired to mentor people, a lot of the younger engineers, and I try to convey to them the best advice that I learned over the years. And that is to protect your boundaries, that is to protect your engagements, and like be a little better at how you work. And that becomes crucial, because what you want to really do is you get to a point where you start making a lot of money, and making more money won't really make that big of an impact. It's more about, at that point, it's more about how can I make the same money but work less. So I had this, in my late 20s, I had this moment where in a single year I made money that was crazy to me. It was like a lottery money, right? Like if I won on a lottery, that's the amount of money I made, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I should have been happy. Like I should be someone that's like, oh, I'm making a lot, so this is really, I'm really successful, so I should feel internally I should be very happy. But what this year has made me do is look back at it and try to think about the kind of life I was living. And I remember I was looking back at that year, and I remember like 3 days that I had fun. Everything else that I remember was related to work. So that didn't feel like the right way to live. Like that's not how I want to, spend my 20s, 30s, 40s while I'm still healthy and want to do other stuff than just be successful at work. So I made a decision to myself that I'm going to work less, even if that means making less money in the near future. And that was a really good decision for me. So last year in May, I finally decided to leave full-time job. And I didn't expect I'll need any time off, because I felt like I took a week off, and I was like, I went to Italy, and I was in Italy. I was like so excited to get back into creating my own projects, nailing all the ideas I had over the years. But after 10 days of time off, I realized that I'm burned out. And it took me 2 months completely off from programming, from doing any creative work, to actually recover from all the grind I did over the years. And that was something that was really hard to me, because I was used to being hyper productive and extremely efficient. And now I was like, I just couldn't look at code. Like I needed time off. So I was preparing for this phase of leaving full time and deciding to go back to indie. I was going through a lot of studies, frameworks, books about psychology, and experimenting on myself to figure out what works and what doesn't. I'm an efficiency freak, so I wanted to figure out what's the simplest yet most result-yielding framework for different areas of my life, something that could be sustainable in the long term. And as you can see here, this is how my life used to look like, where I worked 60, 80 hours every week. Now I work maybe 30 hours per week, probably like something like 6 hours per day is my upper limit. I train pretty much every day now. I do running and bodybuilding still. I invested into a lot of different things over the years. I just bought a 7th flat, and I have multiple apps and a couple of businesses that are generating revenue. I am also able to control my schedule quite a lot. When I was working full-time and doing a lot of consulting, I didn't really have much of a decision-making process for how my calendar looked like. And now I think I have 2 hours scheduled in my calendar for client work. Everything else I control. So I get to spend a lot of time with my friends, with family, doing the stuff I'm excited about. And this is really something that I love. Like I recently came back from Argentina, where I spent 40 days with one of my best friends. And I don't think I would be able to do that if I didn't stop working so hard and just try to find a better fit for myself. But how do I get here, right? That's the biggest question. So I would say, like, the first thing that I would like you to think about is the kind of intention or what brought you here, right? Like, why are you interested in work-life balance? Are you struggling with burnout? Do you feel overwhelmed? Maybe you're lacking focus in your life or career. All of those are very valid. And if anyone would like to share them, feel free to put it in the chat and we can talk about it during the Q&A section. And I would like to say that you're not alone, because if we look at research, global burnout is at 22% and exhaustion is at 42%. That's a lot. And 30% of people are already struggling with poor mental performance, memory issues, all this stuff. And the statistics are very scary. And if we don't start acting now, it will only get worse with time. And taking vacation, like you go for all-inclusive 1 week or 2 week vacation, it doesn't really help with burnout. It doesn't really help you regenerate properly, at least not in any significant way. It's not going to be sustainable. So we need to learn to build a lifestyle that is more congruent with our goals and our aspirations, right? That's really important. So what is one of the most impactful things we can do to align ourselves in our fight against burnout and poor performance? The answer is exponential personal growth, which is it's important part of work-life integration. Exponential personal growth is basically the ability to learn a lot faster, where things like flow come in. Flow is ridiculous. The amount of impact you can have in a short amount of time. You can work for a day and achieve as much as people do in a week. And especially in today's age, it's really easy to stand out against your peers because most people don't really invest in their own learning and growth. So that's really important. We need to be able to tweak our thinking in how we view challenges, the way we can go through breakthroughs in personal development, because the mindset controls everything. And if we think something is too hard, even the words we say to ourselves or how we describe ourselves will affect how we work. Because if you say that you are lazy, rather than you are doing something, like you're describing something you're doing, in psychology, that's actually going to make you behave more lazy. And it's going to be a lot harder to get more productive, which sounds fishy if you're not into psychology, but there's a lot of research against that. When I was going through therapy, my therapist actually explained that to me because I was using a lot of statements describing who I am rather than what I'm doing. And we should also leverage best tools for the problems we are trying to solve. And in today's age, AI is something that can help you with a lot of different problems. And there's a lot of tools already, so the wrappers around AI. In the course, we go into like very pragmatic ways of actually leveraging AI because there are things AI is really good at and there are things AI is not ready yet. And the last point, which is the topic of today's webinar, is work-life integration. And that plays an important role in achieving personal growth, because if you don't have space to learn and grow, you're just going through the motions. You won't be able to level up quickly because if you grind for 12 hours a day, you will learn some skills at work, repetitive work. You're going to get better at that repetitive work. But will you have time to be bold and innovative in your approaches? Will you be able to optimize the workflows or the kind of efficiencies that your team is going through? Probably not. You simply won't have time and energy because all of that is sacrificed for the grind. So what we want is, we don't really want work-life balance. We want work-life integration. And the reason for that is balance usually means taking from one area and giving it to another. So I'm going to work a little less so I can spend more time with the family, but then I'm going to spend less time with the family to work more. Whereas integration is more about finding the sweet spot for all the areas of your life that you care about. This allows you to create a more congruent lifestyle, and it's designed for you, for the priorities that matter to you. Not everyone has the same needs. Not everyone wants to do bodybuilding. Not everyone wants to, be speaking at conferences. Those things might not excite you. So the idea is to come up with your personal priorities that matter to you, and then figure out how you can have it all in a healthy way. You cannot be 100% at everything unless there are techniques that you can, level up very quickly. But generally, you need to find the right amount of time and energy that you're going to spend in different areas of your life. And that it's all about congruency, because if you find that for yourself, like your personal ideal position to be in, it's self-fulfilling. So you're going to be happy, you're going to be satisfied. It's going to be easier to keep doing those things. It's going to be easier to keep growing in your career when your family doesn't suffer. All of those things are intertwined. So that's really important. And to build a fulfilling and well-integrated life, we need to consider how we want to live. That's the first thing. So it's called lifestyle design. And then we want to trail towards financial independence, because money is very useful to give us freedom. Money in itself should not be a goal. But what money gives you is the freedom to make better decisions, to say no more often. So I'll show you how you can reach financial independence a lot sooner than the classic literature suggests. And all of those things are connected, and one can feed into another, and you'll realize that in a second as well. So what is the goal of work-life integration? It's about, first of figuring out what are the things that are important to you, how you want to live, not what the others or your upbringing or your parents or your peers say you should be doing. Because we are all raised to work, right? Like the government would like you to work until you have retirement age. But in reality today, a lot of people can retire a lot sooner. Like you could retire in 10 years of professional career, 15, 20, easy. If you play your cards right and you invest into understanding how things work and then skills and techniques that you can use, you can retire a lot sooner than everyone else thinks they need to work for. Like I already kind of retired, semi-retired. I still love what I'm doing. But for this, I have spent many years to work on that, right? And then the other thing is you have to create a sustainable blend between your professional responsibilities and your personal life, allowing you to optimize the time and resources across those two aspects of your life. And in the end, it will enable you to be more happy and content. And there are a few things that can have a big impact on happiness, because at the end of the day, what we want to achieve with work-life integration is to just be happy and content with where we are and how our life is looking, like how are we living. So money can, in fact, affect happiness, but there is a law of diminishing returns at play here. All the research suggested that happiness flattens out at $75,000. I think adjusted for inflation, it's around $100,000 now. But that actually has been superseded by new research. That correlation is no longer there, and you can actually be more happy if you earn more money. But there is still a point of diminishing returns. If you get to around $200,000, more money usually doesn't mean more happiness. It's obviously going to be affected by your socioeconomic status, which city and country you live, what are the costs of living. But generally, what I realized over the years and what research has been suggesting as well is you get to a point where you keep like in the beginning of your career, you keep increasing your income. You want to make more and more money for the same amount of time. So like if you work as a consultant, I work as a consultant very often, I keep raising my hourly rate, right? But you get to a point where you're still selling your time, which is the only resource you can never get back. So I'm selling my time. An hour of my time is worth $350. That's my current rate. And so I could be selling that and I can work 60, 80 hours and I can make more money. But in reality, I don't really need that much money. So what I realized as my income has kept growing is like, what if for the same amount of time, I'm going to make more money? So I can decrease the amount of time I work. So let's say I started at making $10,000 per month at some point, well, not started, but at some point, and I worked 40 hours. Now I got to a 20,000, but now I realized, okay, 10,000 was more than enough. So I can cut my hours back to 20 hours. And it's the same amount of money, but because I'm spending half the time, I have now free 20 hours per week of my time to do things that excite me, whether that's something not related to work or whether that's investing into being better and learning and building techniques and tools to be more efficient. That's my decision. That's my priority. But what this allows me to do is it allows me to now actually keep increasing my hourly rate because I become smarter, more efficient, and better at what I'm doing. So that's really powerful. So where does the ultimate happiness, there's a study that Harvard did, which is the longest running study in history of science. And it started in 1938. And it's built around figuring out what makes people happy. And it has been tracking people since then up until now. And it's not only tracking the original participants, but their families as well, which is very interesting. So can you affect what makes people the happiest? The research says there's one thing that's a clean cut, what is the most impactful thing for happiness, and it's relationship. That is by far the most underlying and most important finding in the research. Good relationships keeps you happier and healthier. So it's not only your psychological state, but it's also your actual physical state that it affects. So if you have good relationships, it protects your body from sickness. It protects your brain from memory loss. Warm relationships basically mean longer life. And warm relationships have bigger impact on financial success than your IQ level. Once you cross IQ over 110, 115, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make you earn more. But if you have a lot of happy relationships in your life with your parents, with your peers, you can earn over $140,000 per year more than those people that do not. So one thing to remember, when we think about work-life integration, how can you keep good relationships? If you're killing yourself at work and working like a maniac, there is no chance for you to keep good relationships because you simply don't have time to keep in touch with people. This is where balance enables you to cultivate the things that really matter. So let's talk about lifestyle design and financial independence, how it relates to each other. So lifestyle design is about understanding what we value in life, challenging assumptions around what we should do or what we should be. And it's just focusing on like what you really want to do. You as a person, individual. It doesn't have to be anything similar to your siblings, friends, peers, just what do you care about? And there are many different ways of lifestyle design that you could try. And the only one that really requires full financial independence is the one when you simply retire and never make a penny anymore. And that is the only one. Everything else you can do a lot sooner. So if you're already earning a lot, you could lower your hours and work a little less and maybe do a side hustle. Or you could take a career break. You could do mini retirement. Or you could travel the world. A lot of people travel as digital nomads. That makes them very happy. So there are very different ways you could structure your money versus time equation. And this graph really shows it, that the only one that you need for like real FI, it's full retirement. And I don't think most of us, when they even reach that number, will want not to do any kind of project, like just not do anything and watch Netflix. That doesn't seem exciting at all. So what I found personally, it's a lot easier to think about things I do not want to do than what I really want to do. Because we all know what annoys us and disturbs our peace. So I hate commuting to the office. It's lovely to have an option to go to the office to hang out with people because I really enjoy spending time with people. But I really hate when it's mandatory, when I don't have the decision to make. And it's like, I always have to go there because I'm no longer working 8 hours, because the travel is also time that's not very productive for my personal life. So I'm spending more time at work for the same kind of money. And oftentimes I'm not very productive at the office because people keep disturbing me. I don't like when someone controls my schedule. I never want to be denied vacation. I would never in my life want to miss family events. If I have a kid and the kid is doing a play at school, I'm going to be there. And I don't want to work with toxic people. Can you guys still see me correctly? Because my camera froze. Okay, 1 second. Wouldn't be technical presentation if there wasn't an issue. Jesus. 1 second. All right, let's not waste time. I'm not that beautiful. Let me continue. So when you think about designing your lifestyle, what's really important is to consider that you have two curves in your life. One represents your net worth, and that will keep growing over time as your career progresses, as your rate progresses. But the other one represents your health, and that keeps declining. No matter what you do, you can slow it down by taking care of your health and your fitness. but it will still keep going down. And why is this important? People often create bucket lists, and the way they do it, it's not very good. It's not optimal, because it's easy to jump from airplanes when you're 20 because you're healthy, you're not going to get a heart attack, you're just very, very fit usually. But it's going to be very unlikely to jump from an airplane when you're 70 years old. So when you think about planning your life, make sure that your bucket list is split into decades of your life. You can go to theater when you're 70 and you're still going to enjoy it as much as when you're 30. But any kind of crazy stuff, like I do motocrossing, I did actually jump from buildings and airplanes. All of those things I can do now, and unlikely I'm going to do them in the future. So when we think about where's the cutoff between gathering wealth versus spending it, those two curves should really play an important part in your decision making. So what I would like you to do, no, you don't have to put it in chat, but do it for yourself after this webinar, is to sit down and try to write down how you would want to live. Don't think about the kind of money you would need or where you're in life currently. Just think about the end goal lifestyle. So this is what I wrote when I did this exercise originally. I want to have at least one active project. I want to control 90% of my schedule. I love sunshine and time outdoors. I want to have regular time with family and kids, deep friendships with a few friends. I don't need hundreds of people. And I want to travel a lot, be fit and healthy, and I value experiences over ownership. This is what I wrote. And what was really interesting about this exercise is before I did it, I have always thought about specific amount of money I need in the bank to start living my ideal life. But the problem was that this number kept growing over the years, even though my expenses didn't really increase. So I was thinking like originally, like I need 1 million, then 2 million, then 3 million, and it just kept growing. But once I did this exercise of designing my ideal lifestyle, I realized that the things that I really care about aren't as expensive as I thought. Money is still required to be able to travel or to have freedom to like work less, but not as much money as I thought. So don't get into this race when you just keep going after the money, and that is the goal in itself, because you're gonna find yourself at a very old age with a big number in your bank account and not very happy. The last thing you want to have is regrets that you didn't try things. So how can you gain that freedom, and how can you use it to reach your personal goals? So the first thing I recommend people get started with on path to financial independence. There's a couple of assumptions that the standard literature around financial independence says that I disagree with, so I'm gonna bust them. Let's talk about the first two routes for retirement. There's this concept of called lean retirement and fat retirement. Lean retirement is about living frugally and having extreme savings. Followers of lean retirement usually go into extremes. They don't own a car because they can use a bike to get anywhere, or they get really cheap one. They fix their own house issues. If their piping in the house breaks, they learn how to do it through YouTube or whatever. On the other hand, people doing fat retirement is more like a traditional lifestyle where you can have high salary and you don't need aggressive saving and investment strategies. It's for those that don't want to really reduce their current standard of living, but still want to retire early. Fat could go into extremes, but basically we think when I say fat retirement, it means basically I own a decent car. I don't need a Ferrari, but I have like a good Mercedes, and I spend money to save time. That's the main goal. So the question becomes, where do you fall? You could be somewhere in between those two classical approaches. What I would suggest is prioritizing experiences over ownership, because then you realize life becomes a lot cheaper. I did improv classes in Warsaw here, and a whole semester of improv class costed me 1/8 of the cost of my last iPhone. And I'm sure as hell not going to remember which iPhone model I had years from now, but I will remember the fun times and memories that I built during improv classes, not to mention the life skills I learned during those classes. So I think going into lean retirement isn't optimal. And most people on this webinar are probably working as high-level creatives, so your earning potential is high. And you should take that into account when making decisions between spending money versus spending time. The only reasons you can never recover your time is no matter how much money you make, even if you become extremely rich, like Steve Jobs was extremely rich, and he still got sick and died, and he could not spend any kind of money to save himself. So you have to be careful about the time you're spending. So I would recommend you spend your money wisely. Don't get into mentality, I can do it everything myself. This is something very common to engineers. If you enjoy doing something, like let's say you need to clean your house, if you enjoy it, if it relaxes you, then you can do it because it's enjoyable. But if you don't, just hire someone to do it for you. Because in the time that they spend cleaning your house, you could probably have earned multiples of what you paid them. And it also gives someone a job. So that's good for our economy. And I would say invest in courses and tools that can enhance your efficiency, because if you can spend less time and achieve the same amount of results, free that time to do other endeavors, to spend that time with family or invest in your learning and becoming even more productive. So you can become hyper productive in fraction of time that you're currently working. And that is just extremely useful. That by far, this is the best investment I did in my life, where I created tools that save me hours every single week. And so I could work less and less over the years. And now the standard advice for financial independence is you have to have 25 times your yearly expenses. Then you invest it at 4% over inflation, and you never run out of money. But this advice has a few assumption flaws in it that I disagree with. First off, it assumes you will never earn another dollar, which is so unlikely. Most of creative people, when they tend to free their time, they have more time for projects that are high risk or more exciting to them. So, for example, when I left my full-time job, the first project I did a programming course. And that programming course has made over $500,000 in 3 months, which is crazy. I never expected it, but I would never do it if I was still working full-time, because I simply didn't have the space to do that project, even though I thought about it for years. So the other assumption that you have in standard FI literature is you want to die with the money you started with, which makes very little sense if you think about it. Some would argue that maybe you want to leave money for your children. But I would say, hopefully by the time we die, our kids are really grown adults with their own career and their own money. And the money that we would leave them wouldn't make that big of a difference for their life. But you know what would make a difference? If, as they were growing up, their parents were more present, if they spend more time doing fun things and enjoying life, more vacation, more crazy projects, because the father could, build something with the son or the daughter. And that would end up building better relationships as a result. And as we saw from research, better relationships means more successful people, happier, healthier. So there's no arguing with the research here. This is far better way to live. And once you remove those assumptions, those two assumptions, never making a dollar and wanting to die with the same amount of money, you realize you can either withdraw more money every year, or you can start living your ideal lifestyle a lot sooner than you would think. And I would say the second one is better. So how can you die with zero? So you basically want to spend money on your experiences, time with family, leaving a lasting legacy. So building crazy, ambitious projects, writing books, whatever rocks your boat. Take bigger risk. Don't postpone them until your specific FI number or age. Just try to incorporate them into your lifestyle today. Once you get older, taking risk becomes a lot harder. So try to do it while you're still young and full of energy and will. So the big question that people often ask me is so what happens when you reach financial independence? Most people won't really stop working. If you're hyper productive, you get a lot of feedback from that. So you're actually very fulfilled at your job. So oftentimes, even if you reach that number, you're still going to stay at your job as long as it's still exciting and learning for you. But what this gives you is you can choose projects that excite you. It's so much easier to say no. And you get so-called fuck you money, which means you can always leave your situation if it's uncomfortable, because you're no longer worried about sustaining your lifestyle, paying the bills, all this stuff is covered. So it basically gives you freedom to choose. So let's talk about 5 mistakes or fallacies that people tend to do when they try to do work-life integration. There isn't a better way to burn yourself out than by following hustle culture. Oftentimes, overwork is presented as the rite of passage. The promise of success is dangled like a carrot, implying a direct correlation between hours worked and rewards gained. As I mentioned, people would often ask me, like, when do you sleep? Because they were so, like, it was the hustle, right? Like, I was constantly releasing new projects and people were talking about it. But as most of us learn in our career, that promise is rarely fulfilled. In companies, oftentimes promotions are political. So it's not really true, and it's usually not worth killing yourself for. Like, there's no money that is worth killing yourself for any company. And even though we can push ourselves to work harder and longer for some time, we will always have to pay our due for it. Beyond a certain point, working more doesn't really equate better results. And research also proves that. And as much as more money doesn't mean more happiness, as we shown before, there are things that matter more. So what happens if you do the first two fallacies? You usually skip out on rest and leisure, but it's something that you must absolutely protect. No one else is going to protect it for you. So if you want to have sustainable career for decades, right, that is important. If we're talking about 1 year, then you don't need much of advice. But if you want to build a career that's going to last decades, then you need to really learn how to prioritize and rest well, and understanding what is essential and how you can work smarter, not just harder. So one thing that you can never compromise is your sleep. I did this for years. Because of all the strain I put on myself, both mentally and physically, I had so many issues falling asleep. I would wake up during the night multiple times, and doing professional bodybuilding and programming, I was just stretching myself thin. So if you read research around sleep deprivation, it is crazy how scary it is. A lot of people think they can work on little sleep, but that is not true. Research is very clear on that. You should aim to sleep at least 7 to 9 hours, depending on your lifestyle and your chronotype and age, obviously. But there's a lot of misconceptions in terms of sleep. For example, you probably heard that you should wake up in the light sleeping side, like a light sleeping phase. That has been debunked. If you can sleep for another 15, 30 minutes, just sleep. It doesn't matter which phase you're in. You should just sleep as much as possible. But if you're still not convinced, this is another list of things that sleep deprivation can lead to. It affects your mental and physical health. There's just no arguments. Sleep should be your first priority, to the point when you can try to hyper-optimize everything around your work. But if you're deprived of sleep, you're just better off taking a nap. That's going to be far more impactful than any techniques we can show you. And it affects mental and physical, which is why I keep bringing it up. We have a lot of lessons around improving your sleep patterns and quality in the course at AI Flow State Academy, which we go into very deep details, but like here, obviously for a very short time, we cannot do that. It is crucial that you don't neglect it. It's something I always thought I don't need as much. I feel fine working sleeping 6 hours, but in reality, the difference in efficiency and creativity that I observed as I fixed my sleep has been enormous. So let's get back to leisure and rest. Most people don't even understand that how you can rest. And there are different kinds of rest you can have, from physical through sensory towards spiritual, like meditation. Ideally, you want to incorporate all the different kinds of rest through your life, right? Through your week, ideally. The more often you rest, the better. So we have content about that as well. As you can see, like spiritual is meditation. Meditation, people have a lot of misconceptions around meditation. Meditation is not about reaching Zen state where you don't think. Meditation is really about being mindful and understanding and seeing the thoughts you feel and emotions you feel and letting them go. Think about observing a sky and you see the clouds. The clouds are your thoughts. You just don't hang on to them. You just let them slide, and that makes you less reactive, which is always better in both personal and commercial life. And when it comes to work-life balance, it's not one-time activity, but a constant cycle you should be going through. As life happens and your circumstances change, take a step back and ask yourself, what is causing me stress or dissatisfaction? Is it longer hours? Is it burnout? Is my memory crumbling? Ask yourself how you feel. It's really important to understand your decisions and priorities that are driving your life. But it's also important to have emotional reflexivity. So being able to recognize how a given situation makes you feel. Then you have to think about what you're willing to sacrifice and for how long. Because if you have been prioritizing work over family, for example, that's gonna cost you a lot. So it's really important to be able to avoid regrets later on, because oftentimes we get into really bad situations and then we have regrets. That's the worst feeling you can have, because you cannot really do anything with the past. So you have to consider your options, how you can change your patterns to align more with your priorities, how much time would you like to spend with family or doing hobbies, and then you have to take action. And this might be self-imposing boundaries, not working on evenings or weekends, turning down new projects or travel requests. A lot about work-life balance is about saying no to new projects, saying no to your bosses. Having money and financial freedom makes it a lot easier to say no. But rather than killing yourself for any company, you really need to learn how to be more efficient in limited time span. Not only will it allow you to enjoy your time off more, but it will make you look for improvements to workflows and making yourself and others more efficient. Oftentimes what happens is we are driven by incentives. If the incentives at work is you have to stay 8 hours at work, then probably people will just spend that time any way they see fit. So Facebook, Twitter, all kinds of distractions. But if you were in an environment where it's all about getting things done and you could finish your work in 6 hours, then you would become a lot more efficient, because you would have actual benefit to being more efficient rather than just getting more work. So what I do is I use getting things done methodology for managing any kind of task I need to perform in my life, whether that's personal or professional. And having a system I can trust means my brain doesn't need to constantly remember little things, and it frees it up to work on other challenges I have in life. And research shows that if you want to get into flow state, one of the things that helps you is putting hard limit on your working hours. If you know you can only work 6 hours, then you're going to focus more and be less distracted. And I tend to do that, and I observe that it actually does make me more productive. If I stretched my days, I felt like the time was passing through my fingers and I didn't really feel very accomplished at the end of the day. But if I say I only have 6 hours to work, I am just laser focused on the stuff I need to do. And then after those 6 hours, I feel accomplished. I don't really feel the need to do more. And to avoid burnout, you should also have ways to unwind and take care of your body and mind. As I said, I enjoy meditation. I found it useful, but research is even more convincing. Even 10-minute meditation can increase your recovery time, physical and mental. It can make you heal faster. It sounds like magic, to be honest, but it's really powerful and it's really proven to work. And the other thing you should take care of is your body. You cannot really expect your mind to work at 100% if you're neglecting your physical fitness. You don't need to be hardcore with sports, but I would recommend at least 2 hours of resistance training per week. That's what the research suggests, like strength training, for example. And trying to get into like healthy body fat percentage and just eating better, not just fast foods, because they do affect your brain capability, especially when it comes to memory and learning. And when we talk about happiness, one of the things that's really important is also self-efficacy. It's basically the individual belief in their capacity to achieve the goals they have at work. So here we see the difference between a normal versus a toxic workplace. And if you're in a toxic environment, your ability to be self-sufficient can significantly reduce the chance of burnout. And self-efficacy also leads to order of magnitude higher holistic health and performance. So it's really crazy when you think about it. So you have those two graphs. There's a lot of things being shown here, but basically feeling like you can accomplish your goals without having a lot of help and supervision just makes you more efficient. This is partially the kind of environment you work on, like the bosses and the way the team culture is built, but you can also affect this by learning the right mindset and techniques to just make yourself more independent. And looking at body of research, what is the holy grail of increased productivity? It's the idea of flow states. And the quality of improvements that have been registered in research is astounding. The first time I found flow I thought it like I literally thought they made a mistake because I saw the number 500% in increasing productivity for people that are able to reach it. That sounded ridiculous. How can you be 5 times more efficient? But then a bunch of other research came out, and they all showed this kind of crazy numbers. So you get 3 days of heightened creativity after you reach flow state, 400% increase in problem solving and skill acquisition. That is like superpowers. And it's one of the main reasons like why I decided to join the guys to build AI flow states course, because I personally got into this zone many times without having the research originally when I was younger, and I was hyper productive, and I was always excited to look into it and learn how I can trigger it on will rather than just it being random. And I was able to build techniques and tools for myself. But what we have in the course just can teach anyone to reach flow state. And you can stand out so far against your peers that it just becomes so easy. It's become so easy to be better, be more rewarded, get better pay, or even just work less. And no one would know better. Like you could work 3-4 hours rather than 8, and people wouldn't realize because the output you generated would probably even increase. If you look at the numbers, it would be higher than what you were doing at your regular workflow. So kind of crazy. And flow state has been defined by many researchers. It's often referenced in sports, for example, and you can think of it as state of kind of increased motivation, enjoyment. You have like total focus on the task at hand, whether that's programming or winning a World Cup in football. But what's really cool about it is it's also immensely enjoyable and makes hard work feel a lot easier. Depending on the kind of nervous system you have, we have different kind of stimulations. Like, for example, I need hard challenges. Hard challenges I can tackle. If something is boring and easy, then it's really hard for myself to motivate to work on stuff. But if I can get into flow state, any kind of challenges I have, I can just crush through them. And that is really, really useful. So we only touched on a few subjects in this webinar, but we dive a lot deeper in the course in module 3, where we give you direct and practical tips how to improve aspects of your work-life balance. I mentioned today sleep and all this stuff. And in other modules, we shed light on how to get into peak performance with flow states and how you can learn your personal flow archetype, because all of us are different. There are different kind of archetypes you can be into, and that means we have to define triggers and how can we turn on the flow state. We also create structure, habits, and patterns to help you leverage the research outcomes and increase your productivity and well-being. We'll show you how to use AI to support flow states, and not just tools, but also changing your behavioral patterns, breaking habit loops, and other psychological aspects of changing the way we work. And at the end of it, it's not about knowing, it's about transformation. And most of the exciting courses omit this critical part, because it's if you just watch something and you just passive and you're not actually doing exercises, like I asked you a few times, like write down your lifestyle, think about this, ask yourself this. This is really important, because in today's age, what happens is people watch YouTube videos on self-help, on productivity improvement, and they feel like they did something. But there is no growth without doing. In the course, we have a lot of practical exercises. Basically, every module, you'll get practical exercises that you will need to do. You will need to do work. But if you do the work, you will learn a lot and you will improve your abilities. And we're going to have like a big discount for pre-order for people that are interested. You'll get an email after this webinar with materials and recording of this. And hopefully, you can join us and we can do Q&A now. Does anyone have any questions? You can write them in chat or you can ask to speak, whatever easier. Okay, let's go through Ivan's question first. I just have no idea where I'm going to work, coming back home, that's it, plus hobbies, but I don't see big future of me as a programming, nothing big and exciting, and I have no ideas how to manage to control my calendar as you suggested earlier. Yeah, so this, I feel like a lot of people probably feel this. The thing is, so that's interesting. If you're just spending time, like that's the thing, like you don't really have work-life balance, right? I was in the same situation. I would just work, sleep, maybe train, like that was my hobby, like bodybuilding was my hobby. So I was just going through those three motions and I wasn't really happy. I wasn't really satisfied. I think that with the second part of the question of like the big future as a programmer, so programming, like the way I think about programming is programming is problem solving, right? The fact that we use software is just a way to solve problems. But in general, there are different ways you could do in programming. Like a lot of people just finish as senior programmer. They don't really go higher in their career, but you could become a lead. And once you cross into higher levels of programming, it's less about code and it's more about people and how can you make life easier for others. So as you cross into staff, senior staff, principal engineer, which is where I am at, basically you have to build things. You have to build things that make everyone else happier, right? Make their job easier. So like I build tools, stuff like that. But to be able to even do that, you have to free some time, right? You cannot just grind. Like you need to either ask your bosses to have some research and development time, or you need to somehow manage your workload better to do it. I recommend, like what I found is getting things done is basically like a very simple idea. There's an article you can read, GTD in 15 minutes. If you search that on Google, you'll find a very good summary of what GTD is. But the thing is, once you learn how to deal with your workload, you can become a lot more efficient, especially if you're a programmer. There's a lot of tools and courses you could take to be more efficient. Like in I teach iOS programmers how to be more efficient, but you can find other courses and tools to save time. And anytime you save, I would invest into growing that part of the skills that I need. And I would say soft skills is probably the best investment for programmers because they often lack them. Being able to sell yourself and being able to communicate technical subjects to non-technical people, that's really important. So I would say that that's the first step. The other step is you might not have control because you work full-time, but I don't know what role you're in, but depending on your experience, you can talk with your manager or with your team and try to change the culture, right? So we, at the companies I worked in, I often pushed for less live meetings and more async communication. And I found that works pretty well. Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, the biggest thing is just freeing time. So figuring out where you could probably save some time so that you can either find more enjoyment or build skills that would let you progress in your career. And you could move from a programmer to management. A lot of people go from programming to management. I know if that, that would make you happy. It's a lot it's a lot more complicated because you have to deal with people, very stressful. I personally don't like dealing with people as much, but yeah. You can always DM me as well on Twitter or any other social network if you want to talk in private. That's probably easier for harder questions like that. Adrian asked, any tips regarding revenues? Could you elaborate, Adrian, on that? I'm going to go to the next question and come back to you if you do. Jake asked, how do you suggest exiting the gilded cage? I have a comfortable job, but it's no longer exciting and there's no much space to grow personally. I've done my math and it's around 2 years before reasonable FI for me, but I'm kind of scared about quitting the job. Imposter syndrome. Oh man, yeah, I can relate. So as I said, this has been my experience. Like every single year, I would increase my FI number. So first off, I would ask you, how did you calculate? Did you already account for the things that I mentioned here, where you doesn't really make sense to die with the money you started, and you're probably gonna earn money even if you quit your full-time job, because you're either gonna do consulting, you're gonna join other exciting projects, or you're gonna do side projects. Some of them might be successful, some of them might not be. What the money that you gathered gives you time, right? So you leave your job, maybe you don't have full amount of money, but you have time to explore. Try some different side projects. Try some exciting startup that you might be able to grow, because if you are like in a big corporation and you join a startup, very different job. In startup, you have to wear very different hats, and you probably learn a lot of different skill sets, not just programming and not just whatever you're currently doing. The fear will be there. I lowered my salary before I left. So when I was joining the New York Times, I said to myself, this is my last full-time job, and if I leave or if they fire me, I'm just gonna kind of retire. But I was there for 6 years, and the browser company came to me, and basically they gave me an offer. I did a consulting with them for 2 months, and then I finished the work at the Times on Friday and started the work at the browser on Monday. So I didn't really take any time off, and I wasn't true to my promise of this is my last job, because I was scared. Because it's really hard to say no to comfortable money, right? But when I finally did it, and it was because I got out of the beta zone. Like there's this thing called beta zone where things are bad, but not bad enough. So like you're in this like middle ground, like, yeah, I'm not really learning. It's a little stressful, but it's good money. It's not really killing me. But I got very annoyed with some behavior or political situation in the company, and I was decided, okay, I am now out of the beta zone. So now this is enough, and I'm gonna leave. And I left. I needed 2 months to recover, but then I did the course, and the course exploded. Like I didn't expect the course to make as much money, because it made $500,000 in 3 months, and it's still making money every month now, and it's still making enough money that I could sustain myself, which is crazy. I would never build this course, right? And according to FI, I should never make $1 after I reach financial independence. So the only way to deal with being scared, I would say, is reframing it. Check out the book called Die with Zero, which is where was really eye-opening to me. He talked about those curves. Think about the regrets you might have later in your life, because that's the worst thing you want to do. It's like you don't want to be in a situation 10 years from now when you're going to regret you never tried doing your own thing. So yeah, as much as I can say, I feel you. I think everyone has that issue. Reframing it and just changing the thinking about money and what you want to do, that seems to help. Okay. Anna, can you elaborate on the slide between rising wealth and declining health? Yeah, sure. Let me just switch to that. Okay. So basically, as we become better at our jobs, we keep getting higher paid, right? Generally, you could expect some kind of income increase over the years. And also, if you're smart about money, you're gonna be saving money, right? So you have the increasing net worth. Your bank account keeps growing, but your health keeps declining. And like I'm really big about health and training and taking care of myself, but I know that I'm not gonna be as healthy as I am today when I'm 70. It's just reality of life, right? So this impacts really the way you're going to experience life and what you can do. So a lot of people, like at least in Poland, a lot of the times I hear people like, I'm going to do this cool stuff after 40s or after I'm 50s, or something like that, right? They put an age on it. The thing is, oftentimes that the things you would like to do, you won't be able to do. So it's nice to reach financial independence, but I also don't recommend that this be the goal in itself, because you can get there a little later, but enjoy the road a lot more. And this graph is really important because you want to enjoy your 20s and 30s. You're never going to get back that time, right? So if you sacrifice everything just to get more money, just to be more successful, then you're going to have regrets later on. Simple as that. So I think it's really important to think of, like, I sacrificed a lot in the early years, but then fortunately I had that realization still in my 20s where I stopped working so much. So you still have to pay your due, you still have to work hard. But the thing is that I teach people now is like, rather than working longer hours, learn how to get more out of the hours you're currently doing. And with flow state, you can get 5 times more, which is crazy, right? So imagine the kind of output that you can generate, even if you not even reach 5 times, right? Let's say you double your effectiveness. That is crazy. Like I would pay any money for this kind of investments, like double my investment. That is really the thing about this is enjoy the process of getting to your ideal lifestyle and start that lifestyle sooner. Okay. Antonio said, I've been working for 3 years only. I'm still new in the business world. I think this is the time where I have to improve my skills. I go home from work and start coding again for my personal project. I mean, this is stressful sometimes. This is just to take it slowly. Yeah, so programming, if you're programming at work, programming after work is not resting, right? The thing about brain is like memory formation happen when you are actually not using the same processes. So if I'm daily programming at my job, and then I'm programming after hours, I'm actually doing a disservice to me. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I did it myself. But what I found, and I spoke with a lot of independent developers, friends of mine that are successful, and I mentioned this before, I put restraints on the time I work. So this affects side projects as well. I have a friend that has 2 kids, and he built like 10 different applications. And what he does is, because he wants to spend time with his kids. So every morning they start the day by doing 1 hour on their side project, and they only have 1 hour, but they get hyper productive during that hour. There are no distractions, nothing else matters. It's 1 hour, the kids are still asleep, he's going through the project, just laser focus. I would say that I would rather do that than work 60, 80 hours like I did when I was younger. And learning how to be hyper productive and laser focused is going to also affect your day job. So you get more efficient there. As you get, if I assume business, because you mentioned programming later, if it's related to programming, oftentimes you'll be able to get a remote job. If you get a remote job, you don't really need to work 8 hours. If you get good at organizing your workloads, 6 hours is plenty to get the stuff done. And no one is really gonna, in good companies, no one is gonna question that. So you'll free up another 2 hours to do something else. That's how I would approach it. Alexander asked, how do you manage the bodybuilding work balance? I'm always tempted to cut back on gym effort to have more energy for working and learning, or the other way around, but I don't want to sacrifice my progress in sports. Any tips on finding sweet spot? Okay. Yes. I do, because I've been bodybuilding for 19 years now. I got to 5% body fat competition level, and I am now weighing 97 kilograms, and I still have a 6-pack. What I found over the years is you don't really need as much volume as most literature suggests. A lot of the non-scientific research, or even some scientific research, there is a correlation between volume and progress. But what I found is that if you do too many sets, too long workouts, it affects your mental state a lot. It makes you less productive. Research says that for health, you need 2 hours, but obviously if you want to do like bodybuilding and be very fit, you need to do more than 2 hours per week. What I really found useful is low volume. So what I do now is I go and train, like I do 2 working sets per exercise, but I do it very high intensity. So I probably have 1 rep in reserve at the most for all the exercises. And I just do like six sets in a workout. And that basically that doesn't affect my mental health as much. When I was doing 30, 40 sets per body part, I was fried, man. The only thing I could do after workout is sleep. So I would say that look up into low volume training, and if you need more tips, hit me up on socials. I was happy to help people with their health and fitness. But yeah, I think that is the key factor. It also has this effect that it leads to less injuries. As I get older, more things start to fail me, and I realize that I can work out very well if I do low volume. If I try to push volume up, my shoulders start to hurt and other issues. Adrian, it's more about passive income. You mentioned where to look at. It's also helpful to work less. So the thing is, when you think about your lifestyle and you lower the amount of time you're wasting, so there are a couple of factors. First off, free up time to do things that matter to you and be more productive during the hours you have, right? So let's say you work 8 hours, but you use flow, you use other techniques that we talked about to gain even 50% more productivity out of it, which actually is very little if you look at the research. Now, keep the same output that you had, because that was enough to be your boss be happy with you, or maybe do a little more for if you want to get a promotion, but spend the rest of your time and energy on side projects. And when it comes to passive income, there are different things you can do. I did a course. I have multiple apartments. I have a couple of apps. It's really where your skill sets lie. Today, because AI has enabled a lot of things that were not possible before, I would if you're a programmer, that is awesome. Before I left the Times, I worked in a kids project, which was completely different from what the Times was doing normally. And one of the things that we needed for that project was we needed to generate how-tos. How do you fold a paper plane? How do you bake a cake for children of age like 4 to 8? Now, we hired journalists to do it. When I left and they killed the project later on, I wrote a GPT prompt for the same kind of content. And the GPT generated hundreds of how-tos in a minute. So what AI does is it unlocks potential for, if you're a smart creative and like a programmer or anyone else really, like content creator, you can take your creativity, increase it, and then apply AI to multiply it. And now you can create projects that normally would require you to hire a lot of different people. So that is really powerful. I have successful apps. I have 6 apps in the App Store. The different levels of success, and also success is very personal. Like one of my apps made $300,000, other did like 70,000, and I don't even remember the other incomes. The course made a lot, as I mentioned before. So it's really where your skill sets are and what excites you. But the first step to anything, to building like new businesses, new ideas, is you need time, right? You need to have time to do it, because if you just work and sleep or watch Netflix, then you simply won't have the time to invest. And that's where I build projects. I build a lot of tools for programmers, and I used every single tool that I built to save time. And then I use that time to build more tools, which is why I am one of the very few people in the whole iOS domain that has more than 10 projects that are popular. I have like 20 open source projects, and they are used by thousands of teams. And it's not because I'm brilliant. Like I am just a good programmer. But where I was very good at is like organizing my workflow and then leveraging all those tools to have even more time. And it's basically like a cascading effect. Like when you invest something and it keeps growing 1% over time and that explodes at some point, that's basically what happened with me. Every tool I built was then used by me, and then I built another tool, and then I used another tool. So that's how I approach it. Yulia asked, since joining the Flow project, what is one thing you all noticed in change of your behavior learned from all the insights combined? So a couple of techniques. For me, the biggest one was restricting my work hours, because I used to work so much. So it was really eye-opening for me, because when I said I only have 6 hours instead of 10, like most of the time I work 10 hours, I realized not only am I more productive, but I'm more happy about it. So I can finish my work after 6 hours and feel fulfilled. And this transfers to other areas of my life, because if I'm feeling fulfilled, then it's a lot easier for me to do other cool things during the day, whether that's resting or whether that's doing other projects. It's still good, because if I didn't feel fulfilled and I tried to watch Netflix or play games, I would have this constant voice in my head: you should be more productive, you should be doing more. Whereas when I know that I crammed a lot of work in those 6 hours and I was very productive, I feel at ease. My brain is silent and it can spend its energy where it's needed, whether that's doing sports, whether that's building other projects. That's my choice given the day. And it's honestly, it's very, very fulfilling to be able to just wake up and decide, okay, today I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to do the amount of work I need. And then I'm just going to spend, like, I'm going to work for 4 hours and then I'm going to spend the rest of the day just chilling. And especially for me, because I used to be workaholic when I was younger, that has been very powerful. And the other thing is the happiness. I also observed that, like, since I stopped killing myself for work and I spend more time with friends and build better relationships, way less reactive, way less stressed. So those were the most impactful things for me. Kate, could you elaborate on self-coaching? What kind of advice I can give you here? And I'm going to go to the next question until that. Adrian asks, how do you handle stress that is hanging on you after you finish your job? I usually can't leave and have thinking over and over. So for me, that's sports. That's personal for people. But a lot of the friends that I spoke about this kind of subject, so some people go for a run, some people go to the gym. Like, I know that when I'm at the gym, I cannot think about life problems, work problems, because I'm going to hurt myself. I have a lot of weight on the bar and I'm just putting it above my neck. You have to be focused, right? You have to be focused on the task at hand. I think manual labor, like anything kind of sport, manual labor, that kind of just requires you to focus on physical. That actually helps a lot with the brain, because then brain can unwind and can relax. That's the best solution I've seen over the years. Ivan asked how I would advise people who don't know what's interesting for them and what is not. Most of the time, I don't feel uninteresting in anything. Ivan, I would say this. I used to be introverted. I used to be very shy when I was younger, and today I'm very different. I do public speaking, and I randomly talk to people and anywhere I go to. And the reason I was able to do that is also the answer to your question, because to find out what is interesting to you, you just have to experiment. And it's uncomfortable. It's going to be stressful to do things that are weird. Like, for example, the improv class. I joined improv class randomly. I just saw I was bored one day, sitting in my house, in front of my computer, and I saw an ad for a new improv class starting. And I was like, I never tried this. Maybe it will be fun. It will be something I never tried, so at least it will be new experience, and at least it will force me out of my comfort zone. And I went to it, and I fucking loved it. And I used to be like this. Like, I was scared. I wasn't open. I was, shy. But by exposing myself constantly to different kind of stimulation, different kind of discomfort, like I kind of build my brain now that if something feels a little uncomfortable, I am actually excited about it. So sometimes friends ask, like, I'm basically a yes man now. A friend asked me recently if I want to go for a downhill on bikes. And the only question I ask him is, are we going to survive? I never tried driving downhill through mountains. Never tried. Seems scary. But as long as we survive, I'm willing to try. Maybe I'll get a little beat up or whatever, but it's going to be an experience. And I built everything in my life now around experiences and just getting out of the comfort zone. So I would recommend that you basically just try different things, see what sticks. Not everything is going to work, but don't give up just because a couple of things are boring to you once you try them. And the other question you have is, how do you avoid eating sweets and cravings? Oh yeah, I love sweets, man. I love sweets. So there are a couple of ways you can deal with that. First off, probably everyone noticed that it's a lot easier to say no to unhealthy food early in the day, and it becomes a lot harder during the evenings. And it's because our mental power is kind of like a brain, like the ability to say no and to be more aligned with your goals. It's a lot easier when you're relaxed and rested. If you exhausted, you're gonna probably eat more unhealthy food. There are a couple of techniques from training and dieting. So intermittent fasting, a lot of people like, because intermittent fasting basically limits your eating hours. So you eat for like 8 hours every day, let's say from 12 till 8 p.m. And it doesn't have any magical properties. Research is very clear on that. It's not going to make you, it doesn't really do a lot for you, except it controls portions. So it's just a lot easier to be fooled if you're only eating in 8 hours. You're gonna eat more. You're gonna eat the same, but you're gonna feel more full. And if you feel more full, then it's easier to just not cross the amount of food you wanted to eat. There's nothing wrong with eating sweets. I generally would recommend not going into extremes and not going into labeling food as good and bad, because there's very little things that are bad for you if it's in moderation. I like using Pareto principle, so I eat 80% healthy and then I eat 20% what I want. After this webinar, I'm actually doing an ice cream for myself. I bought Ninja Creamy, which lets me do ice cream from healthy stuff and much better quality. So I've been eating ice cream for the last month every single day, like half a kilogram of ice cream. So either restricting the food, if you feel like, the other tip I have, if you feel like you're hungry after you ate, or generally if you feel like you really have this craving, physical activity has been shown to lower that. So if you just go for a walk, you're probably not going to feel as excited about food. Like it actually helps with mental side of it. So even going for a 10-minute walk can help. Pavel asked, is it possible to use flow state if you're already in a manager position, even an iOS team lead? By this, I mean, you have a lot of meetings and talks during the day. It's very energy consuming and disrupting. Yeah, you still have creative work, right? So it's distracting when you have those meetings. But if you're in the position of some kind of impact on like managerial position, try to get the meetings stacked together so you have longer blocks of time uninterrupted. And then it's going to be much easier to use that time and get into flow state and solve any kind of creative problems you have. It's just generally better for the team. There's actually a plugin for Gmail calendar that can do it for you. If you just Google Gmail calendar, let's see, I don't remember that. I'll search it later. But there's a plugin that basically can get in sync across the team, so even optimizes one-on-ones to have longer blocks of time. But yes, flow can be applied to all the different kind of careers. It's definitely not just programming. Any kind of creative work where you need to solve any kind of hard problems. Even like it's used a lot in sports, which is physical, right? It's not even mental. You're not gonna be very flowy on one-on-ones and stuff like that. But yeah, try to just get the meetings aligned together so that you have a bigger block of time. Because of the same reason, it's also difficult to optimize your 4-hour day. Yeah. So that's why I tend not to go into management too much. I manage teams, but like I said, like when you are in the position to manage, then you can decide to apply techniques that make people more productive, which is limiting in-person meetings or stacking them together as closely as possible. If you do that, then you can actually save some time. It's not really productive. Like I've been programming for 28 years now. It's not really productive to have 10 people on a meeting when it could have been an email. We all know that, but we have to fight for a good team culture in our companies. It falls onto us, and it doesn't even matter if you're a manager or senior. Like oftentimes, when you talk with other people in your team, you can actually push that kind of changes into the office structure. And Kate asked, how can I manage stress and pressure that arise from high level of responsibility? I have several important projects, and beside my personal impact, the final result also depends on other team members. That's a hard question. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like when you manage team, it's not just your output that the results rely on. So it's like I really like high trust environments, and I try to make sure that when I'm managing teams, I as a manager, what I do is I work as a shield. I shield my engineers from all the political stuff, all the higher level decision making, just so they can focus on the problem at hand. It's still stressful because people get delayed and stuff like that. What I found useful for me was I created a team culture where people reach out to each other. Like no one waits for stand-ups to sync up and like, oh, I am blocked by this or that. Like I was in teams before where people would literally wait for the next stand-up to just say that they couldn't work. So what I do in my teams is I make sure async communication is used well. I make sure that everyone knows, like one of the most important things that I found is there has to be a single individual person for any kind of big issue, because if there's no one assigned to it, then people tend not to know who's responsible, and they don't really do a good job solving that problem. It just causes unnecessary problems. Stress and pressure, meditation has helped me a lot, because one of the things that you need to avoid is being reactive. That never helps. And when you're stressed and you have a lot on your shoulders, then it's really easy to be reactive. When you meditate, you learn how to, like, you still feel those emotions, but they don't affect you so much, right? You can feel that you're getting stressed or you're getting nervous or someone pisses you off, but they don't see it because you have the ability to observe it and then filter it through higher brain functions. There's a book, I don't remember the exact title. There's a couple of books written about this subject where we have two brains in our head. One is a monkey brain and one is evolved brain. And oftentimes when something stressful happens or someone pisses you off, the monkey takes steer of your wheel, basically just controls you. But with meditation, I found that it's a lot easier to have a little pause and don't let those things hit me. In terms of pressure, that's a little harder because you will feel responsible for those projects. So I think that the ladder of responsibility here helps. So knowing what everyone is working on, like what is the single SRI, single responsible individual for each of the big pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to solve. And then basically having, like, I tend to take notes about this stuff. So I always have the current status in my personal notes, and I can always sync up with those people, make sure that we're on the same page. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have like a really good advice here. Hugo asked, how do you decide what would be an idea of an app or project and pay that is worth dedicating your time to? Consider you don't know if it could yield results or not. Oh, that's easy for me. I've been thinking about this for many years. I did my first indie project in 2008. And I would say this. There are two kind of things in life, right? There's things that you can control, and there are things you cannot control. If something you cannot control, then you shouldn't stress about it. If you can control something, then you shouldn't complain about it, and you should just do something about it, right? So if we extrapolate that, if we think about building products, I have 3 criteria that I use personally for all the kind of projects, whether that's open source or commercial, that I follow. First off, the project that I'm going to work on has to teach me something. It has to lead to growth. Like I want to keep growing. That's really important to me. The second thing is I have to be proud of the project. So when the project is done, it will be in a quality that I can feel proud, and I can put it in my portfolio. And that has a couple of benefits. First off, I'm only working on projects that I polish, and I make sure that they are, they're good quality. Second of all, it increases my market value. Even if the project doesn't make a single dollar, but it's something that is really good quality, and I put it in my portfolio, my whole portfolio now increased in value. So my market value has increased. I can charge higher rate because I have a very good project in my portfolio. And the third thing, it has to be fun. I only choose side projects that are fun. All of those 3 criteria that I use, as you can see, none of them is related to money. I was successful. Part of it is skills. Part of it is luck. Luck plays a role in projects we build, and we kind of just pretend that it doesn't. That this is just brilliant. It just made money because it's brilliant. No, luck plays a role. But if you use this kind of criteria, then you take away the uncontrollable. So in terms of psychological factors, is I finish this project, and whether it makes $100 or 100,000 or $1 million, I mean, it's going to be great if it makes money. But even if it doesn't, I'm still going to be happy about it because it ticked all the boxes that I care about. It increased my market value. It's something I'm proud of, and it was fun to work on. So that's how I choose any kind of side projects that I work on. I hope that helps. Pavel is asking for career advice. As a programmer, is it smart to think that in 20 years, one still will be able to make money by writing code? I see 2 major problems. Health is declining. Programming as a profession can become much less valuable because of AI, or simply because oversaturation labor market. Everybody wants to become a programmer, and learning curve becomes easier. It sounds like you need to switch to management at some point, at least, nevertheless, if you like it or not. So from like a big company's perspective, senior programmer is considered end job. A lot of people never really advance from senior, which is interesting. I never wanted to join a big company, but I have a lot of friends that work in those. So there are job positions that you can be at that if you don't progress, you get fired. But senior programmers are not that. If you reach like senior programming level, you're not getting fired if you don't progress, and no one is expecting you to progress. Now, once you start going into staff and above, so you have lead, staff, senior staff, principal, or distinguished, basically IML 7, so it's like a distinguished engineer. Those positions are more about impact outside of just code. So I would say just coding is probably not the right choice. I think that this is where a lot of programmers have issue progressing in their career. People think that the way to become better paid or just more successful as a programmer is to just learn new frameworks, new techniques, new tools. That's not really it. You get to a point where you have a limit of how much output you can generate as an individual. So you have to start thinking about having an impact outside of yourself, whether that's impact on the team, on workflows in the company, on team culture, on growing the team. All of those things are going to be more valuable in the long run. It's also skill sets that are cross-disciplinary. Once you learn how to empower others, how to improve workflows, how to manage teams, it's not about going to management. Those are just skills that you need to be a higher output individual. Like you need to, when I started programming, I was 8 years old. When I get to my first job, I was 18. And so I was already a decent programmer, but I was shit team player. I wasn't very good at working with others. And I'm very different today. Like today, for me, there's no success. Like I kind of succeeded. My teammates are failing. All of those things that caused my transformation was because I was managed by people that were terrible at management. Like my leads were not very good, and they said no to any ideas I had. All this stuff is like the worst thing you can do. So what's really cool is today with AI, what you could actually do is you can go to chat, you can describe who you are, what are your current skill sets, and you can describe what you will want to learn. and it can create individual learning plan for you to go from where you are to where you want to be, which is a lot more productive. We even like doing something like this for the course, where we're experimenting with a bot that can advise you like which chapters of the course you should be taking to get most bang out of the time you have. But I would say that you probably want to go above just coding. Coding is just a way to solve problems, but you can solve problems doing other things as well. You don't need to become a manager. Like I'd never planned to become a manager, but like you could become a CTO. You could go in different ways of progressing. I would say health is not that big of a factor when it comes to programming, as long as your mental health is decent. Which, as I showed you, like you can improve by taking care of your body. That's going to be the most determining factor. The biggest issues we have today is the obesity and diabetes. Those affect brain function as well. So as long as you're taking care of your body, your brain should be sustainable for a long time. As for programming becoming less valuable, I think AI isn't gonna kill programmers. I think in general, a lot of jobs, it's not like it's gonna destroy the jobs, but what it does is, if you are smart, if you're investing into being more productive, and you're already productive, and you take AI, learn how to use AI, you become hyper productive. So there are going to be less jobs for the same position, but people that will be doing those jobs will be generating a lot more output. So simply learn how to use AI to empower yourself rather than be afraid of it because it could do some of the job that you're doing. In terms of programming, AI is not that great. It can do easy stuff, like I would say like up to mid-level programming level, but this kind of stuff I do, for example, like which is architecture, developer tooling, big systems, it's really not that good at yet. Maybe in a few years it will be better, but it simply is not there yet. But I use AI daily to make the grunt work that I need to do as a programmer a lot more efficient. Why would I do something that I can ask chat or AI to do it takes it a minute, it would take me half an hour. It's a simple math. So don't fear AI, embrace it. And then I would recommend anyone doing programming to invest more into social skills. Improv classes are great. It's fun, but it also has transferable skills that you can use in your daily life. For example, it teaches you how to do active listening better, which is something that very few people are actually doing in today, especially with all the distractions we have. But yeah, that's how I view it. Does anyone have any other question? If not, I'm going to wrap it up. Okay. Thank you for listening. I hope it was useful, and I hope you join us on the course. It's a lot of content. It's a lot of knowledge, but I'll say this: like, this is a course I joined because I would pay to watch all the details if I didn't know. It's really empowering. So I hope you can get most out of it, and you can become more productive. And ideally, I would recommend use the time to have more fulfilling life, not just necessarily make more money, but it's up to you. Thank you for listening.